What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And today, my guest is Shane Jacob. Hello, Mr. Jacob.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for being here. This is such a great topic. I mean, especially for today's world, which holy cow is complete madness. But if you're okay, I just want to read your bio real quick and we'll get cooking.
Sounds good.
Good deal. Everybody, meet Shane Jacob. Shane's feelings of inadequacy as a young adult led to drinking alcohol to excess on a regular basis. His excessive drinking led to a tragic DUI accident, which led to incarceration. The cycle continued. Shane failed in businesses, failed in marriages, destroyed relationships, was overweight by 40 plus pounds, and was so disgusted and ashamed of himself, he lied and tried to hide it all for years. With the help of horses and God's hand, he finally broke free. Shane took the process and principles that he used to turn his life around, combined with what he learned from his career working with horses, to create Stable Living Coaching, where he helps parents and teens with the challenges they face in today's world. Shane Jacob is a certified life coach, professional horseman, and entrepreneur. So, welcome, Mr. Shane Jacob.
Gary, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate your show and the chance to be here with you.
Well, I love it. And we're going to get cooking real quick, but I'm obligated contractually by myself and myself only. Because for the What If You Could podcast, I just like to ask my guests this my one question. And Shane, have you ever had just that what if you could moment or what if you could thought in your life you'd like to share with the gang?
I've had many of them, but one of them comes to mind when you first asked that, and that was at one point in my life. It was a few years ago, and the question I was asking myself is, what if I could stop drinking? Now, this is after decades of daily drinking to excess. When I mean to excess, I'm not talking about, having a few extra beers. I'm talking about excess, okay? Every day without fail. Okay? Straight up, 2 times in 20 years, 2 days. And those days I was hospitalized and it was out of my control. Other than that, I didn't miss a day. I don't know how many days that is, -2 in 20 plus years, but it's a lot. And it was a terrible vicious cycle. And one day I had the thought of your question. What if what if this wasn't my future? What if I wasn't going to end up dead in a ditch somewhere drunk at a fairly young age? What if what if I could have a different future? And that question, I really thought about that for a long time. And I thought about what it would look like. I thought about it. I didn't even know if I could do it. I mean, I'm waking up in the morning. I'm addicted mentally, physically, in every way. This is part of my lifestyle. It's ingrained in me. It's who I am. This cycle, this negative cycle and basically, here's the cycle I'm talking about. It goes like this. I feel bad about me and it doesn't feel good. I drink alcohol, I feel better. I sober up, I feel worse than I did before, so I drink alcohol, I feel better. It's just it just feeds itself for forever. Ashamed of what you've done, what I've done, ashamed of the night before, ashamed of all the past, ashamed of all the destruction and all the pain and suffering that I caused to so many other people, ashamed of at my progress in life and the way that I'm interacting with the people in my close relationships, in ashamed of the stupid shit that I would do, excuse my language, for when I'm drinking too much, right? And so what do you do to solve the problem? What I did, drink again. So my question was, what if I could not, what if I could stop this? What if I could change? What if I could do something different? And It seemed like a big mountain to climb. It seemed like it was too much. Just I don't know if I can even go through this, but after much thought and much resolve, you know what I came up with? I didn't know if I could. I don't know if I can. I haven't done it before, so what makes me think that I can? There's no way, right? I didn't know what was happening to me at the time, but when I look back and analyze it, what was happening was that one thing that I did know is that I made a decision that I was going to give everything that I had available inside of me to do this thing. That's all I knew. I didn't know if I was going to fall down, and I didn't want to tell anybody in case I failed the first day. So one day on a Sunday morning, I got in my pickup truck and I drove myself to a detox place. And I was still a little shaky that AM. Pretty early getting up for me at 10 AM at that point in my life. And I rolled in there and I stayed for 3 days and 2 nights, and I drove out of there. And I knew one thing. I said, well, what if I could be sober today? And I did. Then I did it the next day. And that was a lot of years ago, and when I kept doing it.
Well, that's one hell of a what if you could. That is one hell. But what? How did you transition from that period? What what made you then go decide eventually, and we'll get through that process, but I mean, what made you decide then from that episode to go, well, I'm going to start now working with teens and parents?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It seems like an interesting transition because it could have been I could be, I work with alcoholics, I could work with this, I could work with that, but you chose somehow, or it was chosen for you. Your gift was to now start working with teens and parents. How did that come about from your journey?
Yeah. I appreciate that question, Gary. And so here's what happened eventually, and it took some time because took a while to figure out how to be a sober person. Uh, but when I looked back into my life, okay, what I knew is that as a young adult, as a teenager and as a young adult, for whatever reason. And now a lot of people have trauma, they have a terrible upbringing, they have something that you can kind of look at and say, that's the cause. But I didn't feel like I had a cause. I had a pretty solid upbringing. I had a solid mom and dad and family, and I thought everything was fine. But for whatever reason, as a younger person, more so, way more so then, I had noise in my head that said that I just felt inadequate, felt like I didn't measure up, felt like I wasn't as good as, felt like everybody else was a little bit better for whatever reason, And so, as much as I tried to fit in school, and I did, and try to do good in school and do good in sports, and I did pretty good at some of those things, but I always had in the back of my mind this tape playing saying that I wasn't good enough. And so, I was very uncomfortable around people for a while and never knew what to say. I still kind of struggle with this today in groups of people, not like then. But anyway, when I was about 16 years old, I found the solution that made me feel better. And it was at the end of a few couple of cans of beer. And I was like, oh, wow, hey, problem solved. This is amazing. Inhibition's gone. I fit in. Everything's fine. And and you know, it sounds kind of silly, but in truth, this thought pattern is what began this cycle. And and so I looked back. Okay, I looked back and I said, what could I tell young Shane? What could I tell the younger version of myself? What would if I would have only known then? We've all said this, right? If I would have known then what I know now. And so I said, what would I have liked to have known? And I'll tell you a couple of things that I'd like to have. By the way, this is why, okay? Because I attempt to help people who are struggling, or if not struggling, to attempt to prevent them from struggling, to know what I wanted to know then. That's why. Uh, in answer to your question, but a couple of things were, hey, I thought that the goal in life was to feel good all the time. I didn't know it was okay not to feel okay. I didn't know that. And so I was doing everything I could until I found a really easy answer to feel better all the time. Of course, I felt worse after and it didn't work, but that was the goal. So one big lesson was that life's not going to feel good all the time, and that's going to be okay. I mean, just to know that and feel it and live with, emotion that doesn't feel good is a big life's lesson. That's one thing, and then that we can. I think it's just I don't, a lot of people we go through our entire life and um, we really don't internalize the idea that we get to choose what we think about ourselves. Sometimes I say to people, I'm like, what if you could think of anything you wanted to about yourself? See, I had no idea of that as a kid. I'm just reacting to the world as it comes in. But when I, as a human being, can come to know, hey, I get to pick what I think about myself, like, and it can be anything I want. I mean, these are these are huge lessons. And so anyway, that's where my
Well, I want to come back to what you said about that. It's interesting because a lot of people come from really great worlds and they get screwed up, and people come from really messed up worlds and get messed up. But what you said about just that feeling of inadequacy, just not feeling good, that voice in your head, even though you had good parents or good life, things were fine. It's like it's amazing how that shows up, right? Like the devil's kind of tapping on your shoulder and saying, you're not that good, and you're like, I don't know where that came from. So did you ever find that? Did you ever find where did this come from? Where did this inadequacy come from, and why did it show up in my life?
yeah. According to me, one of the biggest challenges that we have, that human beings have, that we all have, and it is part of the human experience, is to recognize our own value and come to develop that uh, that part. And so, what I believe is uh, we all, to some degree, I believe that the biggest life's challenge is to come to know that we have this infinite value because um, that all the beliefs that we hold to be true about ourselves impact everything about us, everything that comes out of us, all of our relationships, how we interact with people, they influence everything. And the negative behavior, the things that don't serve us, is coming from somewhere a lack of inside us. So all of us are struggling with this worthiness to some degree, right? And it seems like maybe mine was a little more than the others, or maybe I made a bad choice, more bad choices than other people do along the journey of the process. But this is not the other point to this, Gary, that I want to bring up is this, and that is that a lot of times we look at I'm going to wrap up self-confidence, our self-image, our relationship with ourselves, self-esteem, all those words into one thing, and I'm going to call it the beliefs that we hold to be true about ourselves. Now, a lot of times there's a big school of thought, and if we're not intentional, we can look at the beliefs that are, we can say, oh, self-confidence, yeah, I got that. I did that. I'm a self-confident person. That's just something I checked off the list a long time ago. When in fact, the truth of the matter is the beliefs, that the way that we believe, the things that we think about ourselves are changing on a moment by moment basis throughout our lifetime. And so it kind of goes like this. Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. And then two things happen. It's what I do and think, or what happens to me, right? One of those two things is going to affect, oh, somebody said something that I took as, hurtful to me. And so now I don't feel too good about me. And what am I going to do with that? Am I going to do this, or am I going to continue to do this? And then, oh, I did this, and somebody gives me a big compliment, and then now I feel pretty good, or I accomplished something that I judge to be, makes me a valuable person because now I got a raise at work, and now I'm earning this and have this much net worth, and so I'm worth more. My soul's worth more. And so when we recognize that this is an ongoing endeavor, okay, a lifetime endeavor, that is going to have more impact than anything else that we can spend our time doing, according to me again, that that when we recognize this, that then we have the chance to develop our beliefs the way that we want to. And that is what's going to make the biggest difference in our relationships and in the way that we feel and about all of our results in our life.
Were you raised around horses? Were your family, are you in an area where you raised around horses growing up?
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
sure I
the
was.
horses have always been a part of your life. Was the religion always a part of your life? Was your family churchgoers, religious people?
Yeah, I've always had a belief in God for as long as I can remember, and that did stem from, my family's religion and yes, again on the horses. Was a yeah, if you don't know, there was a movie I think that came out in the 60s called Shane, which is I was named my mom thought that was the greatest movie ever. Shane, come back. And I mean I
Was that Rock Hudson or was that
that was
James
Alan
Dean?
Ladd.
Alan
Alan
Ladd.
Ladd.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And so great movie. And so when I grew up, my mom and dad, they had horses. They were in the ranching business, and I wanted to be a cowboy and do all the cool things that cowboys do. And I do it. And so, and horses are these amazing, magnificent that I've had the blessing to be able to work with for my lifetime. And the thing about them is one of the things is that they demonstrate so much about ourselves. There's so much to be learned when we really dig in and look at horses.
We had horses. We had a couple of we had a little tiny ranchito, tiny place. There's only 2.5 acres in where I live out here, and we got some horses. We rescued some horses from my neighbor hooked us up from the horse rescue. She said, "I'm not going to put green riders with green horses." So she worked us pretty hard, and we had an old trail horse and stuff. And I'll tell you, when you spend time around horses, um, there's a spiritual thing to horses. I mean, you can't lie to a horse. They can see right through you. It's an amazing phenomenon. And you look into their eyes. My favorite thing was always just rub and kiss their nose. I just love their nose. But there is something very spiritual about horses. They're an incredible animal. They really, really are.
Yeah. There's a lot of truth in what you just said right there, and that is that you can't lie, and you look into your eyes and you feel something, and there's a lesson just in that, and a really good one that you know you can't lie and you can't keep a secret either. I mean, you come to the barn, you think you're gonna keep it under the lid, it ain't happen. I mean, the secret's out. And so, they're so reactive and so perceptive
Mm.
because that is what they need to do based on, they're a flight animal, which makes them, they're just so perceptive, and they notice everything. They notice your feelings. And so, one thing that is interesting about that is that if they're if they can know what's inside you, which they can, trust me, they can feel it. And they're going to react to it too, by the way. If they can feel that, I think as we go out into the world, a lot of times what's inside of us is coming out. I'm telling you, what's inside of us, it's coming out. We might not think because we didn't say it, or we didn't feel like we particularly acted a certain way to imply something to somebody else, but I'm telling you, what's inside of us is coming out, and it has the biggest influence on other people. And so uh, it matters. It matters. I used to think that coming back to our thoughts about ourselves, I used to think that I really thought that, what, I can interact with the world, and that's what I'm going to do over there, and I'm going to do it this way. And it has nothing to do with what I think about me or my internal or anything else, which was a really backwards, it didn't work.
I get that. Trust me. Yeah, I kind of want to go back to that roller coaster, you know, analogy that you were using, the hamster wheel, the roller coaster, whatever you want to call it. And I think that one of the many, many challenges that you see with parents and teens nowadays, in my humble opinion, is they aren't allowed, or they're trying to be protected from the roller coaster of life. And so when they are on it, they don't know how to handle it, right? I mean, you know, we wanted to be better parents, so we're protecting our kids and isolating them and giving them everything they want, and now we've created kids who can't handle adversity, can't handle these ups and downs that come along. So, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been working with kids and parents and stuff?
Yeah, stable living coaching is pretty new. It's less than 2 years old now. Before that, we were the Horsemanship Journey and focused solely on horses. But I've had the chance to work with and see a lot of change and a lot of experiences. And it's
So,
very
what's the horseman's journey? What is that?
yeah. So that was our stable living coaching stemmed out of the Horsemanship Journey. The Horsemanship
Horsemanship.
Journey was kind of the our base where we began, which was helping people become better horsemen. And the thing about it, Gary, is that how we relate with horses, I mean, everything's almost identical to how we relate with each other in these relationships. There's so much to be learned, and really the big lesson is in both of them is it all begins right here.
Well, a horse, because a horse will see that. I mean, when it's funny, when I would bring people, I always wanted came because we had horses and chickens and ponies and goats and rabbits and guinea pigs and snake. We just had everything. We even had llamas for a little while, but they couldn't take the heat. But I just loved when you brought someone up to a horse who was so excited to see the horse. They can almost tell me what type of person that was when they approached that horse, you know. So, but we were pretty green. I mean, I would have loved to have gone on further with it, but we moved there. So what did you do there? I mean, you brought people in to ride and to get comfortable with horses before they wanted to own them, or just people who just wanted to get more in touch with themselves and the horses and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things in the horse industry. I mean, I've done a lot. I had a horse sale. We board horses. I've been a farrier. I've worked on horse feet for 30 years. I've board horses and trained horses. I've started colts, and I've had a stud horse and bred mares and shown horses in reining mostly. I've been in the horse business, and so, but what we do now with stable living coaching is most of it's virtual online, and we use horses to demonstrate principles. A couple times we have occasionally have virtual events where we actually have people and horses, and then we demonstrate these principles that we use in stable living coaching to have, better futures, better relationships with kids and parents, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how we go about it.
I love that because I'll tell you what, it almost seems like our kids are either being forgotten, being neglected, or being twisted around so much. I don't remember a time, I'm 62, I don't remember a time where I've seen kids struggling so hard. You know, kids are in a really bad spot right now. I'm not blaming the parents. I mean, it could be news, social media. There's so many things, but don't you see there's a lot of pain out there for children, kids, teens, and parents. Don't you see that?
Undoubtedly, no question about it. There is a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of struggle. There's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of, it's the times. I think, it's easy for us to, for anyone really, just to look at the times and blame it on the times, blame it on the circumstances. I think every generation basically has the same thing. We're all going to blame it on but we're all at our core, at our core, the things that really matter most to human beings, they're not changing. Yes, they got to struggle with cell phones and addiction and screen time and social media and less human interaction and more screen time interaction, and parents are busier with trying to make a living and harder and less personal, even with parents and kids. And so all of those things are real and they need to be addressed, but at the core of everything is the same emotional, the core human needs that you have and I have right here, right this moment, what we're feeling in our lives, they stay the same.
Yeah. And what is that? What is that core feeling that we're missing? What is that core? You felt it early. You felt that inadequacy. I mean, I think a lot of people just have a natural fear of inadequacy. And I think a lot of people really truly just want to be loved, whether you're a 2 week old infant or whether you're an 80-year-old, 90-year-old person. I think we just want to be loved. And I think, you found that with the horses, you found it through God. You it seemed like you had it with your folks, but I don't know why there seems to be a big lack of love, a big lack of affection. It's all fake on social media. We all love each other and stuff like that. But I think when it really comes down to deep, deep feeling, there just seems to be a lack of it. I don't know. What do you think?
I completely agree. I love your thinking and your thoughts on this. There's definitely a lack. There's definitely a lack. The the one big thing is that, what we don't have, we can't give. Where does it come from? I don't know. You ask me, where did I get these thoughts? I don't know where they come from. What I do know is that every human being struggles to some degree with the same kinds of things. And it comes out in different ways, but they're all pretty similar. It comes out in the way that I treat my human beings, the people in my close relationships. It comes out in the how I handle fear. Do I have enough courage to do the new thing, to try to push myself forward? It comes in how I feel about me is coming out in every other way. And so why is it so hard for us to break this barrier? I look at recently there was a veterinarian, a horse veterinarian here in where I live here in Las Vegas, Nevada. That was he was videoed and put out on social media kicking a horse. Okay, kicking a horse in the head, as a matter of fact. And the ensuing social media barrage was unbelievable. Now, hear me that I'm not by any means justifying kicking a horse, particularly in the head. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the response with the hate and the judgment of the person instead of the action. And so I look at that and I just observed and I said, in this example and many other examples, you can think of all kinds of examples, is what are we saying about other people when we condemn other people for, all this hate, and where does it all come from? Where it comes from is we're projecting stuff that we don't like about ourselves. It comes from we're trying to make ourselves feel a little bit better, all of this stuff. And so all of this negativity, all of this hate, all of this all the things that human beings need, it just begins with you. It begins with me, and it begins right now. The more that I can accept me and believe and come to know that, hey, I'm okay and it's going to be okay, the more that I have the capacity to give. That's why I'm telling you, I don't think that it's just a good idea to commit to developing a good a loving relationships, an unconditional loving relationship with yourself over your lifetime. I don't think it's just a good idea. You're going to have a better life. Things are going to go better for you. You're going to earn more money and you're going to be happier and all that, which is all true. But I believe it's more than that. I believe it's our duty, our responsibility to the people in our lives that we deeply care about, because they're the ones that it affects as much as us. And it's the only way that we're going to get to make our contribution to the world. And we've all done stuff. Let me just tell you, Gary, I've done some stuff. Okay. I've done some stuff. I'm not going to talk about it here today, but I've come to peace with it. I've come to terms with it. I've lived in so much shame for so long for the things that what I have judged myself for what I have done. Okay. That I just don't care anymore. We could talk about it. I don't think it's really appropriate for today's conversation because I don't care anymore. I have come to know that that what I have done and who I am are two separate things. And I'm an imperfect human being who's going to do some stuff that's going to be wrong. I'm going to be ashamed of it. It's not going to feel good in here, but I'm still going to be okay with me. And when I know, the more that I can internalize that and know that, the more capacity that I have to do exactly what you're talking about, and that is to give love to other human beings and change this world in a positive way. When I come into the barn, the way that my horses perceive and see me, that equals the quality of that relationship and the way that that day's going to go, that ride's going to go. And you put up a combination of those days and those rides, and that equals our contribution to the world and our relationship. So to have amazing relationships and experience with horses, and to have an amazing life and experiences with human beings, it begins with what we're thinking about ourselves, because that's what it's going to come out to be.
Oh man, yeah, that's powerful stuff right there. And you know, like my old man used to say many years ago when I was growing up, he goes, "Boy, you can't bullshit a bullshitter," and I've been there in fact. So you know, when you get with these kids, it's like you can tell them, guys, there is no shame here. You just leave all that at the door. There's no shame. There's no fear. There's no retribution. There's no, you know, all we're here is. You know, you look in that horse's face, you look in that horse's eyes, even if it's on camera, you know, but it's just all about the love, taking you back. You know, there's a fella named Napoleon Hill that a lot of people know about. He wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich, but he wrote another book that they hid for 70 years. He made his family and his family swear that they wouldn't release this book until all the last ones had died, you know, in his family train until, you know, later generations. And it's called Outwitting the Devil. And it just came out in 2011. And it's such an interesting book because he interviews the devil in the book. Obviously, he probably didn't actually interview the devil, but and it's amazing the stuff that he wrote in 1938 when he wrote this book, and they weren't allowed to publish it until 2011. You know, that's a long time to hold a book, right? Um, they were worried that it was too controversial, that the stuff in there was too controversial. And here's some of the stuff he talked about. The devil owns 98% of everyone on the planet. Schools are indoctrinating our kids. The government is working with the schools to hurt the parents indoctrinate. So there's these different principles he's talking about that he wrote in 1938. That if you look at what's going on today, he nailed it, right? He knocked it out of the park. It's just incredible. So there's a lot of force. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a lot of forces out there that are working against children, families, people like yourself who fought so hard to get where you are. And what you're doing is amazing. I love it. I love it. So when you get with these teens and you're online and you're doing what you're doing with the horse and stuff, I mean, what are the first messages you're sharing with these teens? What's your first thing you want to kind of convey to the kids?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the first thing that I'll tell you this, when we use horses, it's a little bit easier to accept because it makes me less of a preacher and the horse more of the teacher. But back to your question, you know, the first thing is that I want to do, and this is something that I endeavor to do. I have not always been good at, and I wouldn't say that I've mastered this by any means, but one thing that I really believe in with all people, and especially young people, is what Joe Caruso calls honoring their perspective, which means I hear you. I just listen. When you speak, when you endeavor to tell me something, okay, that I just shut up for a minute and I hear you. Now, kids are going to say some pretty stuff, you know, some stuff that I'm not going to agree with, or maybe it sounds silly to me or whatever. Maybe I just think it's just a wrong. It doesn't matter. This isn't agreeing with, this isn't condoning, this isn't making any judgment. It's just making people feel heard. And so when you take the time to honor somebody's perspective, that's the first thing that I do. And that starts to develop the trust that we have that, hey, I care enough about you and what you're saying that I'm going to be here for you and I'm going to hear you. I'm going to try to listen, you know, and I'm going to give some credence, some value. Now, giving value to doesn't mean that I agree with, but I'm just because you said it, that's the value, which means I value you. That works not just with kids, like I said. This is something that we can do as human beings that helps our relationships all the time. And I get sometimes, and in the before if I don't do this intentionally, Hey, everything's all about me. You're going to try to say something, you better hurry because I need to get back to what I'm talking about over here. I don't have a whole bunch of time to listen to your shit that I don't agree with and all this and that and the other. Man, it's hard on relationships when you operate that way. And I know because I've done it a lot. And so that's the first thing. Once we have a little bit of a trust established, now we can, now we can begin to see if we can have some agreement and some understanding and maybe some learning and go from there.
Man, that's powerful, Shane. That that is that is powerful. As let's face it, nobody listens. And children, kids, especially teens, because they don't trust anybody, um, they just don't have anyone that listens. I mean, they don't. And like you nailed it. I mean, people don't talk to each other. People talk at each other. And while someone's talking, you're thinking of what you're going to say next. You're not even listening to what it's like, well, what about me? It's like that saying that people go, you know, enough about me. Well, what do you think about me? Right? It's just like that's kind of the world we live in. But man, when you sit down and just let someone talk, it's like a pebble in a quiet pond, man. It starts off and then all of a sudden it's just people unload because they feel that trust. It's a safe place where they can finally tell people how they feel. That's super powerful what you just said.
Yeah, that it makes a good, it makes a good beginning. We just hear them and it's not even so much that we even fully understand because what's happening is as I actively listen, as I try to honor your perspective and take it in. Now I'm trying to understand, but more importantly, that if I understand what you're saying and not, what's happening is you see me attempting to connect with you, right? And so as that happens, just in the attempt alone, the trust level's going up.
So when you're working with with the teens, I mean, your main focus seems to be with the teens, but you also work a lot with the parents to help the parents with the overwhelm. Um, like we touched on, this is a crazy world. I mean, I realize you can go back 2,000 years and it was tough on kids back then. There was some sort of social media in Egypt 2,000 years ago. But I think today it just seems like the issues that we had as kids. I was a total latchkey kid, right? I come home, there's nobody there. I mean, I'm having beans out of a can for Thanksgiving because I don't know where everybody is, right? So, but I think it's more than that. I think things are being taken from kids that weren't taken from us back then. And what you said earlier about, it just comes from inside. You have to reach inside. You have to love yourself. You have to have this positiveness about yourself. You must love yourself. It's just you must. I mean, it starts there, right? But I think a lot of kids just can't find that. I think all of us can't find it. I can't find it. I mean, I think so many of us cannot find that true love of ourselves, which would allow us to then, like you said, just have everything you want because you have someone that you trust that's always there, and it's you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. The there's a lot in what you just said. One thing is that um, we have to address these things. I'm not saying that we don't need to. I'm saying that the best way to address them is coming from a place of internal strength and confidence about ourselves. But we do need to address screen time, the amount of human connection, and the real things that are in our real world today on a daily basis. The what though that is going to make the most differences is your question is how can I do, oh, that's great, Shane, sounds real nice, how am I going to get that, is I think is what I hear you saying, which is a real question. It's like, hey, where's all this coming from? Well, the thing of it is that beliefs are things that can be developed. It's a
Mhm.
learned skill. What I believe about me is a learned skill. Now, I'm going to have all this influence and all this influence and all this influence. But as an adult, at some point in my life, hopefully I'm going to take responsibility for what I feel. Okay. Now, I'm also going to already have all of the lifetime I start out with the raw material. It's called an empty brain, we'll call it, okay, as a baby. Now, I have this unique, nobody else matches what's inside of me right now in this brain of mine. Even in identical twins, they're slightly different. And so then I'm going to have my lifetime experience is going to be feeding my supercomputer, right? For all this time until I'm an adult. And I'm going to have all this input 24/7 until I'm an adult. So I have all my environment or my experience and all my raw material, my DNA, my hereditary, and that constitutes the way that my processor works. So that the environment and the things that have happened to me are the influence that I've had from circumstances and outside people. I'm going to continue to have that for as long as I live. And so what I hear and what happens to me matters, right? Because I'm going to make meaning out of that. If you tell me, hey, you're a jerk, Shane, or if you can say, hey, Shane, you're awesome, I love you, that's going to make a difference. That's going to influence me, right? But between what you said and what I make mean out of it is a place for a decision. That if I am intentional, I can choose what that means. So if you said to me, Gary, hey, Shane, you're a jerk, and I'm like, hey, oh, let me get my decision ready here before I take that in and don't even think about it, and my supercomputer just inputs it. Okay, hold on. Is that true? Whoa, 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 whoa. And this is my own self-talk. Gary is truly wrong because I am not a jerk. Okay. And so then I'm going to say, well, why would, I might have to go back and see if I need to address something. But the point here is I get to choose what that means to me and whether I accept it or not. So if human beings can become intentional, and this is my message to the world about how to develop those things, we can rely less, not completely, but we can rely less on the world about how we feel about ourselves. And we can be more responsible for ourselves of how we do this with our own thoughts. And I have 7 habits to evolve self-belief that work. Okay. That's how we get it done. And then we're less reliant on the world. And then we can make our contribution, if that helps.
Well, I love what you said, and it reminds me of the filter. We all have a filter, and we have a filter going in and a filter going out, right? We have to filter what people say to us and the thoughts they put in our head and all the crap that's poured into our heads through our filter. We have to control that filter. We have to control the filter going out too, based on what we said, the thoughts, our internal thoughts and things like that. What you talked about is so crucial. So filter. I don't care what someone says to me. I'm going to filter that through, like you said, and go, nah, rejected. That's bullshit. I don't care what you have to say. But, so I love the filter and how we have to control our thoughts going in and out. But I want to go back a little bit though, if I can. So you do the impossible. I mean, my wife's been sober 21 years. When between meth and alcohol, I've talked about this. She'd have no problem if she heard me talk about this. She was in a bad place, and it was actually her manager at work who saved her life and just said, "Listen, you know, you can't come to work and just fall asleep at your desk every day because you've been doing meth for 4 days straight. So you could either go into a program, but we'll help you cover, or you're fired." One or the other. And that's the one thing she couldn't stand to lose was her job, right? So she's been sober for 21 years. Um, and from where you were, it's the odds are just not on your side, brother. Shane, the odds are not on it. So when you come out of this and you did the what needs to be done, you did the one day at a time thing, right? I made it today. What if I could make it tomorrow? But then you started working through these philosophies with yourself. You started working with these techniques. You started with the horses and all this stuff, coming up with what you're doing today. Um, How did that come about? Were you conscientious of the fact that I'm coming up with a program, I'm coming up with something that is powerful, or was it just 10 years down the road you go, "Hey, shit, this worked for me, maybe it'll work for someone else."
Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, congratulations to your wife. That's amazing. Meth is tough, alcohol is tough, all of that. And to do that and to just make a total transformation, be clean for 21 years is exceptional. So that's awesome. Those that's awesome. Uh for me, I was lucky enough to when I was a young, let's see, I was one of my first jobs outside of my working for my dad on the ranch was I had a sales job um, for an insurance company, and I had studied the books that they primed me, man. I read Think and Grow Rich when I was in, my 20s, and along with The Greatest Salesman, I could list just like ton. I had all this positive mental attitude. Really, my grandma was a big Stephen Covey, Seven Habits of Highly
Mm.
Effective People fan, and so I had all this influence coming to me, and um, so I had a awareness of a lot of things, and so when I finally got sober and stabilized a little bit, then um, you know, over a couple of years, I just looked back and I really said I analyzed myself and I really just said, what I described before. I'm like, I wonder, you know, I still the things that I'd done can be fixed, a lot of them, I was trying to change my life and fix it and give myself forgiveness and so go back and fix and make amends and things like that. And I couldn't, some things aren't fixable. So I looked and I caught and I thought about all the pain and destruction that I'd caused for so many people for so long, and it was a long trail of a lot of ugliness. And and I said, how could I have avoided this? And then it wasn't before too long, I said, and something clicked with me about something about it, and I said, maybe if you did this, that it would change, this kid's life. And it kind of just went from there of being able to, because, I don't know. I know as a matter of fact that people who are open, kids who are open, and parents who are open to looking at the world and learning, and they don't, if I asked 100 people, if I asked everybody listening right now if they had a fixed or a growth mindset, almost 100% would say that they have a growth mindset. They want to learn. But really, when it comes down to it, if you look what they're actually doing in their habits, not so much. So, but when people are willing to take a deep look at themselves and say, hey, I'm not quite where I want to be, and that's okay. And I'm going to be willing to move forward. They can make little adjustments. You or I might look at something that somebody does and say, "Oh, that wasn't much." To them, it's everything. These little shifts in how that we change and view the world have trajectories in lifetimes that can save a lot of pain and suffering. And so that's kind of how it came about. It was kind of on accident and a lot of purpose and intention to it. But when I see these little shifts that people are making, the people that are willing to make them, it's powerful. I mean, it's amazing.
You know what? A key thing that you talked about there is exposure. Exposure. People are not exposed. You see people fighting on social media about stupid stuff that they have no idea about. It's like you got to get out and travel a little bit. You got to see the world. You have no idea what you're even talking about. You have no exposure. Whatever has been put into your mind, you think that is a reliable source of information when it's not, because you need to go out and find it. You found it in one way. You found a road that probably wasn't the best road, but it brought you to where you are today, you know. And that's all that matters is where you are today, right? Starting from here, making those little shifts, like you said, it's exposure. Um, and because you had that early exposure, you did have something that when you got clarity, that you can now start bringing it back, right? Recall from some of the earlier things with your folks and stuff. So, what do you bring to these kids then? Do you bring them a scared straight sort of attitude of don't do this what I did, or is it more of a just kind of based on what they are? I mean, what's kind of your philosophy when you're working with these teens?
Yeah, super good question. Um, the fear is a good motivator. Um, they say that we do a lot of things out of fear, but I just don't. I've changed my philosophy over my lifetime, and I I don't go too deep into my story and all the ugliness of it, and for the fear factor, for the shock factor, or any of that, because what I have found is more of like it's kind of amazing to me because I've considered myself a tough guy, a cowboy, a man's man, and a man's, and so, for me to be talking about emotional needs, just doesn't even, I'm not even, it still sounds kind of foreign to me. But what I have found, Gary, the truth of what I have found in dealing with people is that what really matters and what makes the difference isn't the fear thing, it's the connection thing, which comes from having the inner strength and the courage to be vulnerable and to do these things like listen and make these connections and increase the trust. Because when those things happen, okay, if I if it includes some of my story, then so be it. But it's not for a fear factor. It's to expose myself in this relationship. I'm not holding anything back. And I'm going to ask you not to hold anything back. I'm going to give you appropriate vulnerability, not like, hey, I'm Shane, here I am, and here's my deepest, darkest story, as Brene Brown says. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being willing to be open and to be honest and not to be hiding in here and holding back in the thing that I have with you and me. So if I can open up and you can take a really close look at me and I can expose myself and you can see that, and then what happens with vulnerability is the connection that happens. This Brene Brown also says that we're hardwired for connection. When we feel this connection that we can have with other human beings, and that means that we have a certain amount of trust. And that means when I have this connection with a parent or really, or a teen or anybody in my life, that's where the magic starts to happen right there. That's where if you want to make a shift, you're going to make a shift. If you don't, we're going to talk about it. And we're going to see why you don't want to. But at least we're going to be making progress. And that's really what happens. And that's my philosophy in getting it done. And
Man, I love that. I was writing that down just as you said that. I put connection equals trust. And whether it's when you hook onto a horse, when you lock on, I mean, you walk out there, right? We had the greatest farrier, man, because we had Chief, who was a old trail horse. He would go, we'd get on him, bareback. We would just get me and the boys, and he would go just so far and turn around and come back to the house, no matter what. That's just what he did. I'm like, dude, yeah, no, we want to keep going. He's like, no, man, that's what I do. I go this that far and then come. And then we had Cheyenne, and Cheyenne had been really abused, and our friend was hesitant to give us Cheyenne, but I said, I gotta have her. I gotta have her. So we went up to the rescue up there in the mountains where it is from where we live. And the guy said, listen, she will kick the shit out of pretty much anybody who goes by her. So if you're stupid enough to go in there with her, right, knock yourself out, right? We'll see how it goes. So we brought up our little friend up there who was who hooked us up there. And they put her into the round pen. And Pamela said, little British girl, she was like 4 feet two, but she could take on any horse. She was the toughest 4 foot 2 woman you ever saw in your life, British gal. So she said, all right, well, you go in there and good luck. You want a helmet? I'm like, no. So I walk in there, and sure enough, she turned around, looked at me, came right over to me, hooked right on. It was just amazing. I get goosebumps every time I think about it. I loved her. She knew that she was finally going to go home to somewhere she was safe. And we took such good care of her. We barely ever rode her because no one could get on her, but we had a great farrier. So it even made the news and everything. So he came, he said, I'll work with her. I could, I've been working with horses my whole life. And he did amazing work with her. He did amazing work. He just had, so they called him the horse whisperer because that movie had come out with Robert Redford. But, and I believe that's what I love so much about what you're doing with the horses and with people, because I believe it is so connected, right? If you can get that kid to lock on, they can hook with you and you've built that trust. Man, you could change lives with that, Shane. That's powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And the thing of it is uh, that's available for anyone in their personal relationships to be had. It's
Yeah.
available.
You
We
know
just got
what?
to be
The
intentional.
teens are one thing, and teens and parents have been not getting along for as long as teens and parents have been alive. I think Adam and Eve, if they would have had a baby, that child would have fought with Adam and Eve too. Teens just, we always have, right? There's always something. Um, So when you get with the parents, though, and their kid wants to dye their hair purple and cut off body parts and have metal shoved in all sorts of weird body parts, and it's just doing crazy stuff, and the parents are losing their mind. I mean, so how do you take the parents in and say, all right, we somehow need to get that trust, that connection. You need to be able to listen to your kids, communicate with your kids. I mean, what do you do with the parents?
Yeah. Well, it ain't always easy and it ain't always pretty, because life can be pretty messy, for all of us. So yeah, I there's that's a big question. The biggest thing that we can do, and a lot of these things that um we have to be good. We have to be leaders, we do need to be leaders as parents. We are the leaders, the same as with horses, and we can be loving, unconditional, loving leaders, which doesn't mean that we're passive, and it doesn't mean that anything goes, and it doesn't mean we're going to roll over. It doesn't mean any of that. It doesn't, being an unconditional, being the leader is being the leader. That means at the core, I'm going to be the decision maker here, period, end of story, and some of these messages are confusing. In other words, you know, loving yourself a lot of times is mistaken for, overconfidence or, arrogance. Okay. Arrogance is a totally different thing. It's totally different. And matter of fact, arrogance stems from a lack of confidence, not an overconfidence. So we get those two things confused a lot. And so a lot of times we reject the idea of a loving relationship with ourselves because we don't fully understand what it means. We also, another one that can be kind of confusing is leadership and love and and boundaries and consequences and these things. We look at them and we say, well, we don't want to be too hard on our kids and too restrictive, and we want to give them, like I said, we need to honor their perspective, but that doesn't mean that their perspective is right. It doesn't mean that that's what the rules are. It doesn't mean that they get to break. It doesn't mean any of that. So getting some real clarity and some real understanding of what's going on, usually, it's just, here's something that's the same. You described like a whole bunch of problems that parents can be having, and the same thing goes with horses. We're having all this stuff, and we look at them, we're like, if that kid would just do this, or if this horse would just do this, everything would be fine. And that kid and these kids these days, and I just can't believe kids, and that my kid especially, he does this and he does that, and and really, while they all have their own free will and they're making their own decisions, the biggest influence we have is what's coming out of us, that's inside of us. And when we change ourselves, things start to change outside of us. And it kind of goes that way when we just hold on, let's just begin right here first, and that's the biggest thing that we can, that's the biggest thing we can do.
Yeah, I like what you said. I mean, loving yourself is not about ego. You don't need to be a narcissist to love yourself. That's the opposite of what we're talking about here. Um, Self-love is not about narcissism, like I'm so great, I'm so handsome, I'm so this or that. It's about acceptance. It's about knowing that you are not a perfect person. There's no such thing. And and you have to give yourself some slack. cut yourself some slack. Like, I say it all the time to my boys. I said, be kinder to yourself, man. You're doing a good job. The world's not an easy place. Just be kind to yourself. There's not enough kindness in the world. You don't have to beat yourself up over it, like that. There's something else that you said a while back that I just love so much. I want to write it down so I didn't forget it. But you said, beliefs are things that can be developed. Beliefs are things that can be developed. And I thought, damn, I'm going to write that down. That was good right there. So when you're working with people, are you not changing their beliefs, but are you bringing them different beliefs and helping them maybe steer them in different ways? Or what do you mean
Yeah,
by
that's a
beliefs are things that can be developed?
Yeah, it's a super good question because I've been talking a lot today about beliefs that we hold to be true about ourselves, and I've said that we could choose to be that whatever it is, and we can. And so I don't, tell people what they should believe. I would suggest to you and to everybody listening to consider the idea that you are an invaluable human being just for the fact that you breathe.
Yeah.
However, my real point is that what you believe about yourself is not something, it's something that is happening to you. But if you become aware of it and conscious, you can choose what you want to believe. We choose what we want to believe, and we can develop beliefs. It's not as easy as making a decision. If I said, well, I want to believe I'm a billionaire, I could believe that and then I would become a billionaire. But I, if I don't truly believe that, saying it and having the thought, it's kind of like an affirmation that I don't believe to be true. Well, what if I don't believe what I want? What if I don't believe I'm a very good person? What if I believe I'm a little bit deficient in some areas? What if I believe I just don't quite measure up? What if I believe I'm not 100%, invaluable, Shane? What if I don't believe that? Well, you can actually change what you believe. Bev Aaron says that a belief is a thought that we hold in our mind that we continue to prove to be true. So therefore, if I want to say, I love myself. Now, let me tell you something. There was a big span in my life where I could look in the mirror and I could not say these words. I like myself. I love you, Shane. I can say them today and I mean it and I believe it. I couldn't even get the words out. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't okay. I knew it and I didn't believe it. And if I did say it, there's no way I believed it to be true. But come back to a thought that you hold in your mind that you continue to prove to be true. So it's not just a thought that you hold in your mind. You have to give your brain evidence that it's true over time. Okay. And it doesn't take decades. Okay. This is something that if you work at, you can change what you believe if you choose to. This supercomputer, when you take more uh, action in it and realize that you get to choose a lot of the processing that goes on inside there, it's miraculous. And so you can change what you hold to be true about yourself. If you want to believe something about yourself, if it's not too far. Now let's just say back to my billionaire thing, that would be hard for me to believe, okay? Because that would be hard for me to accept at this point in my life that I'm a billionaire. So what I would do in that point is I would like take these little like ladder beliefs, ladder steps. Okay. Well, I'm worth I'm worth 10 million. Okay. That's my first one. Now, I can believe that, right? Or
Mhm.
whatever it is. I'm worth
Yeah.
100,000. I'm worth 50. I don't care what the number is. Just the point is that you ladder it to what's something that you can accept inside your head. Then you prove that to be true, and then you work towards your ultimate goal of what you want to believe.
Yeah. And it's so funny because taking what you said, and I talk to a lot of people about stuff like this, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not a good manifester, or I'm not a good goal setter, I'm not a good, wish come truer type of person." I go, "Yeah, you are. You're amazing. Everything you have right now, you created it. You manifested it. I'm not good enough. Well, all right, you're not good enough. I could never get that girl. You didn't get her. I could never have that job. You're right. You didn't get it. So you're already doing it. But what you're doing it is in a negative way. If you just put that shift, like you said, that little shift, these aren't major shifts. But if maybe once in a while you go, you know what? I am going to ask that girl on a date. I'm not going to tell myself I couldn't get it. I'm going to ask her, or I'm going to try for that job, right? Because you're already manifesting. You're just manifesting bullshit, right?
That's right. That's great. Yep.
So there's one last thing, and you've been so gracious with your time. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I love what you wrote. You said, "My message to the world is that your value is immeasurable. You are priceless regardless of what you have done or not done, and that you desire is possible for you. What you desire is possible for you." And that's just such a beautiful statement, because we are incredible creatures, right? I mean, this the mind that we have, the body that we have. I mean, we're miracles. You should not be here. I should not be here. I mean, I've done some really stupid shit. My wife shouldn't be here. Um, but we're miracles. We just are. I mean, our bodies are miracles, our hands, our brains, everything that works on us has a purpose. It's just the most incredible thing. So I loved that message about that. I think what you're doing is so positive. I think
Thanks
it's
so
great
much.
stuff.
Thanks so much for having me. Uh, I'll leave you with this, and that is that to the sound of anybody who's listening, if um, I, I hope that you know, and I hope that if you don't know, you'll at least consider taking my word for it. That just like you just said, regardless of what you've done, or regardless of what you haven't done, or even regardless of what has been done to you, there you are 100% as you are. You're 1.0 right now. It's not only enough, it's 100%. And the more that you can come to internalize that, the more, the better results you're going to have in your own, and the better you're going to have for the people that you love, and to be able to make your more fully reach your potential in this lifetime. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, you kind of beat me to it because I was going to ask you one last question. I always give people the what if you could question, and then I lie and say, well, I do have one more question. And my last question was going to be, Shane, if you had a last thought you'd like to leave with everybody, and if there's a thought or a saying or something that you had, to leave us with, what would it be? But I think you just did. But if you've got another, man, let it rip because you got tons of great stuff.
Yeah. Just a part two of that would be, what if, what if, what if you could choose to believe anything you wanted to about yourself? Part one. And part two, what if what you believed about yourself had more influence on the results in your lifetime than anything else that you could do? And that's what I have to leave you with.
I love that, brother. That is great, great stuff. So, everybody, this is Shane Jacob. Shane, how do we find you? Where do we look for you? How do we get involved in your program? What do you have cooking for us? How do we,
Yeah.
all of us teens and parents, where do we find Shane Jacob?
Stableliving.com. We're on the horsemanshipjourney.com and stableliving.com. We're on all the media channels everywhere in the world. We hope to hear from you.
That's awesome. All right, brother. Well, guys, this has been so powerful. Shane is a gift. Please reach out and take advantage of it. Help your kids, help your teens, help yourself. Don't go crazy raising teenagers because they're going to go off one day and you're going to miss them. So trust me on that. Like Trace Atkins has a great song called You're Going to Miss This, man. And I send that to my boys all the time while he's struggling with his 2-year-old and his 2-month-old. I'm gonna go, Chris, you're gonna miss this, man. Trust me. Listen to this song, you'll cry. I do every time. All right, my brother, you've been great. Thank you so much, everybody. This is Shane Jacob. Please look for him on his amazing podcast. That you find him on, on his website, Stable Living Coaching. You'll be glad that you did. So thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.